Richard Thornton stood at his office window on the third floor of his grand colonial home, watching the morning sunlight paint golden stripes across the manicured lawn below. At 58, he had built an empire in commercial real estate, but lately, the view from his window had become more interesting than any business deal. Down on the grass, his two sons were running, really running. Their wheelchairs sat empty near the patio, abandoned like relics from another life. 7-year-old Daniel wore a bright blue shirt, his reddish-brown hair catching the light as he laughed. 9-year-old Marcus, in his red t-shirt, was trying to catch his younger brother, both of them moving with a freedom Richard hadn't seen in years. And there, right in the middle of them, was Grace Williams, the new maid he'd hired 3 months ago. She wore her usual orange uniform dress with the white collar and apron, those yellow cleaning gloves still on her hands as if she'd been pulled away mid-task. Her dark hair was pinned back neatly, and her smile, well, her smile was something Richard had almost forgotten. People could have, genuine, full of light. Richard's jaw tightened. His late wife, Catherine, had passed 2 years ago from cancer, leaving him alone to care for their boys. After the accident that had taken their mother's focus, a car crash that had left both children with injuries, requiring wheelchairs, Richard had hired nurse after nurse, therapist after therapist. Everyone said the same thing. The boys might never walk properly again. The muscle damage, the psychological trauma, it was all too much. He'd accepted it. Built ramps, renovated the house, made peace with it. But this woman he'd hired to clean his house was doing something nobody else had managed to do. Richard walked downstairs slowly, his dress shoes clicking against the marble floor. He stepped out onto the patio, and the sound of children's laughter hit him like a wave. When was the last time he'd heard that? Grace noticed him first. Her smile didn't fade, but something shifted in her eyes, a quiet awareness. She gently called to the boys. "Daniel, Marcus, let's take a rest now." "Oh, Miss Grace." Daniel protested, but he was already slowing down, his small chest heaving with exertion. Richard watched as Grace helped both boys back into their chairs, her movements patient and practiced. She didn't rush them, didn't make them feel like they'd done something wrong. She just helped. "Mr. Thornton," Grace said, straightening up, "I apologize if we disturbed you." The boys finished their lessons early, and the physical therapist canceled today's session, so I thought some sunshine might do them good. Richard looked at his sons. Their faces were flushed, their eyes bright. Marcus was grinning at his brother, and Daniel was trying to catch his breath while laughing at something only they understood. "How long have they been walking?" Richard asked quietly. Grace met his gaze steadily. "About 3 weeks now. We started slowly, just a few steps here and there. They're stronger than the doctors think, Mr. Thornton." "Why didn't you tell me?" There was a pause. Grace folded her hands in front of her apron. "I didn't want to give you false hope, sir. And I didn't want to take away their joy by making it into something medical and serious right away. They needed to believe they could do it first." Richard felt something crack inside his chest. This woman, this maid he barely knew, had understood something fundamental that he'd missed. His boys didn't need more doctors. They needed someone to believe in them. "Dad, did you see?" Marcus wheeled closer, his face eager. "I ran faster than Daniel." "You did not!" Daniel shot back, grinning. Richard crouched down, eye level with his sons. "I saw. You were amazing." That evening, after the boys were in bed, Richard found Grace in the kitchen, finishing the dinner cleanup. She was humming something soft and old-fashioned, her movements economical and practiced. "Grace," he said from the doorway. She turned, wiping her hands on a towel. "Yes, sir?" "Sit down, please." He gestured to the kitchen table. "I'd like to talk." She hesitated, then sat, her posture straight, her hands folded. Richard sat across from her, suddenly unsure how to begin. "I've been thinking about what I saw today," he said, "and I need to understand. What made you think you could help? My boys, when every specialist said it wasn't possible?" Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mr. Thornton, I'm 53 years old. I've raised 4 children of my own, and I've worked in a lot of homes over the years. I've learned something about children. They rise or fall to the expectations we set for them." She looked at him with those calm, steady eyes. "Your boys lost their mother. Then they were told they'd lost their legs, too. That's a lot of loss for small hearts to carry. Sometimes, people just need someone to show them what they can do instead of what they can't. Richard felt his throat tighten. My wife, Catherine, she would have done that. She would have known. I'm sure she would have, Grace said gently. And I imagine she'd be proud of them now. How did you start? With the walking? Grace smiled. Oh, it wasn't anything fancy. I just asked them one day if they wanted to try standing while we did a puzzle. No pressure, just try. Daniel stood for maybe 10 seconds that first time. But you should have seen his face, Mr. Thornton. Like he'd climbed a mountain, she continued. Then Marcus wanted to try. Brothers, you know, they push each other. Soon they were standing every day, then taking a step, then two. I let them set the pace. I just stayed close. Let them know I believed they could. Richard ran a hand over his face. I've been so focused on protecting them from disappointment that I never imagined. You've been grieving too, Grace said quietly. That takes up a lot of space in the heart. Doesn't leave much room for hope sometimes. The truth of it hit Richard square in the chest. He had been grieving, not just for Catherine, but for the life he'd imagined for his boys. The sports teams, the running through the house, the normal childhood he thought the accident had stolen. What do I do now? He asked. Grace smiled. You keep believing in them. You celebrate every step, and you let them know that whether they're running or rolling, you're proud of them just the same. Over the following weeks, Richard rearranged his schedule. He started coming home earlier, spending evenings on the lawn with his sons. Grace was always there, encouraging from the sidelines, ready with water and snacks and that steady, calming presence. One Saturday afternoon, Richard organized a small family gathering, his brother's family, a few close friends. He wanted everyone to see what his boys could do. But as the guests arrived, Richard noticed Marcus becoming quiet, his confidence seeming to shrink. Grace noticed, too. She knelt beside Marcus's wheelchair and spoke to him softly, just loud enough for Richard to hear. You know what I learned raising my kids? The people who love you don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be you. Whether you walk today or roll today, you're still the same wonderful Marcus. Marcus looked up at her. What if I can't do it in front of everyone? Then you can't, Grace said simply. And that's okay. You've got nothing to prove to anybody, sweetheart. Nothing at all. But 10 minutes later, when Daniel challenged him to a race, Marcus was out of his chair, running across the grass with his brother, both of them shrieking with laughter. The guests erupted in applause, but Richard wasn't watching them. He was watching Grace, who stood back with quiet satisfaction, her yellow gloves clutched in her hands. That night, after everyone had left and the boys were asleep, Richard asked Grace to join him on the back porch. The evening was warm. Crickets singing in the garden Catherine had planted years ago. I owe you an apology, Richard said. Grace looked surprised. Sir, when I hired you, I saw you as just someone to clean the house, help with basic care. I didn't see you. I didn't see what you had to offer. What you've given my sons. He paused, his voice thick. You've given them back their childhood. Grace shook her head gently. I didn't give them anything they didn't already have inside them. I just reminded them it was there. You did more than that, Richard said. You reminded me too. After Catherine died, I forgot how to be present. I threw myself into work because it was easier than being home, where everything reminded me of her. I wasn't really parenting my boys. I was just managing them. Grief does that, Grace said. Makes us small for a while. It's not forever. Richard looked at this woman who had come into his home as an employee and had somehow become something so much more important. Grace, I want to offer you a different position. Not as a maid, but as a full-time caregiver for the boys. Better pay, better hours. They need you. We need you. Grace was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the darkened lawn where the boys' wheelchairs sat side by side. Mr. Thornton, I'm honored, truly, but I need to know something first. Are you offering me this because you want help with your children? Or because you want someone to do the hard part so you don't have to? The question landed like a stone in still water. Richard felt it ripple through him. Because, Grace continued gently, those boys don't need another employee. They need their father. They need you on that lawn with them. They need you at breakfast, asking about their dreams. They need you tucking them in, telling them about their mother. keeping her memory alive. Richard felt tears pricking his eyes. I don't know if I can be what they need. Yes, you can, Grace said firmly. You just have to show up. That's all parenting really is. Mr. Thornton, just showing up, day after day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She stood smoothing her apron. I'll accept your offer on one condition. You join us every afternoon on that lawn. You run with your boys. You fall down with them and get back up with them. You be their father, not their manager. Can you do that? Richard stood too, extending his hand. Yes, I can do that. They shook hands, and Richard realized it was the first time in 2 years that he'd made a promise he truly intended to keep. 6 months later, the Thornton household had transformed. Richard had cut back his hours, started working from home 2 days a week. Every afternoon, weather permitting, he was on the lawn with Daniel and Marcus. Sometimes they walked, sometimes they ran. Sometimes they sat in the grass and talked about Catherine, sharing memories, keeping her alive in their hearts. Grace had become part of the family in a way that had nothing to do with job titles. She was there for morning chaos and evening homework battles. She was there with bandages when Daniel fell and with encouragement when Marcus doubted himself. And she was there with wisdom when Richard forgot again how to be patient. One evening, Richard found a moment alone with her in the kitchen. You know, he said, I hired you to clean my house. You ended up cleaning out my heart instead. Grace laughed, that warm sound that had become the soundtrack of their home. Oh, Mr. Thornton, hearts are much easier to clean than baseboards. Trust me. Richard, he said. Please, just Richard. All right then, Richard. She smiled. Your boys are thriving. You're thriving. That's all any of us can ask for, isn't it? To be seen, to be valued, to know we matter. You matter, Grace, to this family, to me. She squeezed his hand briefly. And you matter to those boys more than you know. Never forget that. As Richard watched his sons playing in the living room that evening, Daniel building blocks while Marcus drew pictures of their family, now including Grace, he understood something profound. Sometimes the people who change our lives don't arrive with credentials or fanfare. Sometimes they arrive in an orange uniform with yellow gloves, bringing nothing but belief and kindness and the radical notion that everyone deserves a chance to be more than their circumstances suggest. Grace Williams had taught him that, and he would spend the rest of his life making sure his sons learned it too, because in the end, that's what love really is. Not protection from falling, but belief that when we fall, we can rise again, and the simple gift of someone standing nearby ready to cheer us on when we do.